Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's MIPS data submission for Year 2, 2018 of the Quality Payment Program Office Hour session. The purpose of this webinar is to answer frequently asked questions about submitting MIPS data for the Year 2, 2018 of the Quality Payment Program, as well as the data submission feature on the qpp.cms.gov. The presentation will be followed by a question and answer session where attendees will have the opportunity to ask questions. Now, I will turn it over to Adam Richards, Health Insurance Specialist in the Center for Clinical Standards and Quality at CMS. Please go ahead.
All right, great. Well, thank you, and hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our last office hour session on data submission for the 2018 performance year. Not only are we inching closer to the first day of spring, but we also have the close of the Merit-Based Incentive Payment System data submission period on the horizon. So our goal today in our time together is to try to address any remaining questions that you may have as it pertains to data submission. As with our other sessions, we have several of our subject matter experts on the line to provide support, and we will do our absolute best to try to answer as many questions as possible with the time that we have today. So admittedly, there may be some questions that are a bit nuanced and very situation specific that will require a bit of additional investigation. So as always, we'll try to do our best to answer the burning question up front, but we may have to follow up with you in a separate email or a separate service center ticket. So just keep that in mind if you do have some of those more weedy questions. Now, before we get on to the open Q&A portion of our session, I do want to review a couple high-level updates and topics that might help to address your questions and concerns right away. This usually takes us about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll open up the phone line for discussion. So just bear with me as I get through these first couple slides. Also, and just to answer this question right off the bat, we will post a copy of the recording, the slide deck, and the transcript within our webinar library on qpp.cms.gov in about a week or two, which will be just in time for the close of submission. We do have our previous office hour session from February currently available in the webinar library. So if you are interested in reviewing that recording after our call today, please do so. Lastly, and if you've joined us before, you've heard me say this time and time again, I highly encourage each of you to sign up for the Quality Payment Program listserv. If you haven't done so already, this will keep you in touch with us with all things QPP specific. You'll know when resources are coming out, any major announcements. It's an excellent form of communication related to the Quality Payment Program. So again, if you just visit the website, qpp.cms.gov, and scroll to the bottom of the page, you can enter your email address, and you will be on our listserv. All right, so let's get started. Jumping to slide 3, just to talk a little bit about our topics for discussion today. Again, we'll take the first 10 to 15 minutes to just go through a couple of key updates just to make sure everyone's comfortable, hopefully maybe answer some questions right off the bat. Talking a little bit about some of our key dates, submitting data through the websites and what you can expect, as well as talk a little bit about our new identity management system. Then we'll get into the available resources, talk a little bit about what we have out there in our resource library right now to help you through the final 2 weeks of the submission period, as well as some of the help and support, the free help and support that we have available right now on the ground through our Technical Assistance Initiative. So we'll cover all of that, and then we will open up the phone line to take your questions. Okay, charging forward, I'm on slide 5. So a couple of key dates that I want to make sure we're all tracking to. As I mentioned, we are getting closer to the end of the submission period. So for the majority, I think, of the folks on the line today, that submission period ends on April 2nd, 2019. That's the end for MIPS-eligible clinicians submitting data through the website or through maybe a QCDR or a registry. The other date that you see on screen, March 22nd, 2019, that is the end date for those who have been using, basically our groups who are using the CMS web interface. So web interface users, and that option does close on March 22nd, so that is this Friday. So just in case you're tracking, and that is an option that you're using right now. Again, for the rest of folks reporting, April 2nd, which is 2 weeks from today, will be the close of the submission period. I do want to mention we have been hosting weekly CMS Web Interface webinars throughout the duration of the data submission period. So I want to flag for those of you who are using Web Interface that tomorrow is the last of those webinars. So that's tomorrow, Wednesday, March 20th. So if you do need any last-minute help or support, highly encourage you signing up for that webinar and attending tomorrow, because tomorrow is the last webinar for the CMS Web Interface. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Again, just to talk a little bit about basic submission. Again, if you are submitting data to us this year, whether you're submitting through the websites or you're working with a vendor to submit data and you just want to go in and take a look, you will sign in via the QPP website and use your Harp identity management credentials, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Again, you'll go to qpp.cms.gov, locate the Sign In tab at the top right-hand corner, and you'll sign in with your identity management credentials. This will allow you to submit your 2018 data related to promoting interoperability, the improvement activities performance category. Not only can you submit your data, but you can also take a look at what's been submitted on your behalf. And we always recommend doing this. So you can submit, as you can see the tip on screen, you can submit and update your data throughout the submission period. We highly, highly recommend going in there and taking a look. Even if you're not using the website to submit your data to us, just going in and making sure that all the data is accurate from someone else who may have been submitting on your behalf. We get a lot of questions. Just I think on our last session too, we had an issue come up where there was some data issues found. One of our clinicians found some data issues. They were able to reconcile those issues and go back in and update their data just because they were very diligent and tracking and in the website. So highly encourage you to sign in. You can go in, update and submit your records. We'll automatically save those records and update in real time. So if you haven't done so already, please do sign in. Which takes us to our next slide, talking a little bit about our new identity management system. So following the 2017 submission period, we heard from a number of clinicians, practice support staff, some of our third-party vendors, that the Enterprise Identity Management System, what many of you know as EIDM, had its challenges. In many cases, it took too long to create an account. You had to establish separate rules for each program you're in. Some cases you had multiple passwords, IDs, all things that added a little bit of burden. So in an effort to reduce some of that burden, we have decided that it was time to move away from EIDM and toward a more intuitive and hopefully streamlined system called HARP, which stands for the HICS Access Roles and Profiles System. So we made that transition on December 19, 2018. We officially transitioned from EIDM to HARP for the Quality Payment Program. If you had a previous EIDM account, the good news here is all of that was automatically transitioned over to HARP. So if you did have an EIDM, you were automatically migrated. You'll continue using your existing EIDM user ID and password to sign into the QPP website. Now, if you are a new user or a new clinician, for those who do not have or did not previously have an EIDM account, you will need to enroll with HARP or in HARP. So there is a step-by-step guide that is available for users on the Quality Payment Program website. So if you go over to our resource library and just type in HARP and some of our identity management information, you will find that user guide, and actually in just a couple slides we'll flag it again for you, just those links that are available. I do want to mention that if you are a new user, you will need to sign into qpp.cms.gov and connect with your organization, which in many cases is your practice. And once you're connected, you'll be able to report your data either at the individual or group level for that practice. Again, I do want to reiterate, because we have gotten this question before, if you already have an EIDM account, is there anything else that you need to do? No. We migrated EIDM accounts over to HARP. You're good to go. Your you're fine. It's just for new users that would need to create that Harp account. Okay, moving on to our next slide. And this actually is a very nice segue, just to talk a little bit about the Harp Resources. Again, if you are a new user and you do need to create a new identity management account under Harp, these are the resources that you want to start with. We've got a really great user guide that can walk you through the entire process, but also to complement that user guide, we've created a number of really fantastic demo videos walking you through all aspects of creating accounts, to connecting with an organization, to what you need to do as a security official. So they're all there. They're very straightforward, and they're also very short. Many of them are micro videos to kind of get you through that information as quickly as possible. So if you do need additional information, all of that is available on qpp.cms.gov under our resource library. Speaking of additional resources that we have for the 2018 data submission period, on the next slide, just to talk a little bit more about what's available now for you to use with 2 weeks remaining. So I did mention we have the recording from our office hours session that we did back in February, so that's available in our webinar library on qpp.cms.gov. But we also have a number of really fantastic resources in the resource library. Again, we have some of our data submission frequently asked questions. These are a lot of the questions that you've been submitting to us, either through the Service Center or through our webinars. So the most frequently asked questions we have available with those answers. Also, the 2018 Data Submission User Guide, another really fantastic resource. But I also want to point out the data submission demo videos. Again, just like the Harp videos, these walk through very specific elements of data submission. Anywhere from uploading to reviewing to navigating the experience. It's all in these videos, and they're also very concise too. So it won't take a lot of time if you're interested in learning just about one aspect and don't necessarily want to go to the user guide. These videos are a great supplement. So again, please take a look at those if you haven't done so already. I think those will help you with 2 weeks remaining. Okay. Moving on to the next slide, just to talk a little bit, we have all these really fantastic resources available between our fact sheets, user guides, frequently asked questions, and our micro videos. But for those who really need some one-on-one assistance, direct technical assistance, we do have that available, absolutely no cost to you. Again, depending on your practice size, we have specialists right now waiting for your call if you do need additional support related to submitting your data. And it's not just about data submission. The groups that you see on screen can walk you through all aspects of the quality payment program, regardless of the performance year as well. But since we are talking data submission today, and since we have about 2 weeks left in the window, these groups are available to help you. For those of you in smaller practices, I encourage you to reach out to our Small Underserved and Rural Support Initiative. Our larger practices can certainly reach out to our Quality Innovation Networks as well as our Transforming Clinical Practice Initiative. All are available to help and provide one-on-one assistance and answer your questions. If you have a quick question, we also encourage you to reach out to our Quality Payment Program Service Center. Our representatives are also standing by. You can do so. I believe we have the phone number as well as the email address, qpp@cms.hhs.gov, to get to our service center for those questions that we may not be able to answer today. Okay. I think we're making really good timing. So we're going to move on to the Q&A portion of our call today. Now, we did have a number of frequently asked questions that come into us. Again, I touched on these a little bit as a part of one of the guides that we have. I won't spend too much time going through each of these. I'll reserve some of the questions just to maybe get us started. But again, I just want to touch on a few of these at a very high level, a few that I did see come in from the last session. So we've already covered signing into qpp.cms.gov. I think we're actually going to move on to the next slide because I think we've covered these a bit because I do want to touch on a few of the slides on the questions on this slide, which I think are super important and are certainly ones that we get quite often. As you can see, the second one on screen is one that we definitely get a lot. And we have MIPS eligible clinicians who left our practice during the performance period. What does this mean for our 2018 performance period reporting and our 2018 MIPS adjustments? So it's a great question, and there's not a simple answer, but I'm going to try to walk through this as quickly as I can for you so that we can kind of charge on here. So to answer that question, it really depends on how your practice chooses to participate for the 2018 performance period. So if your practice is participating at the individual level, meaning that you are submitting data on behalf of each MIPS eligible clinician, you are not required to submit individual data for those who left your practice during the 2018 performance year. But we encourage you to do so if you have the data available so that individual MIPS eligible clinician doesn't receive a final score of 0 and the negative 5% payment adjustment. So if you submit data on behalf of that clinician who left your practice, he or she will receive a final score and a payment adjustment based on the data that was submitted. If you do not submit on behalf of a clinician who left your practice, again, they will get a 0 and the negative 5% payment adjustment. Now at the group level, so that means that you'd be submitting aggregated data on behalf of all MIPS eligible clinicians in the group. You will include data from all of those clinicians who are part of your practice during the performance period as appropriate to the measures and activities that you've selected. All MIPS eligible clinicians in the group, including those who left your practice, will receive a final score and payment adjustments based on that group's submission. So I know that was a mouthful. I hope that's helpful. We can revisit that a little later on if needed. I also want to touch a little bit about on the third question that's on there, because this is also a question that we get quite a bit, is what will I see during the submission period? I know this was a question that was very popular in the 2017 performance year. It's also a question that's popular for 2018. So let me just walk you through a couple of things that you'll see right now as a part of, if you would have signed in on January 2nd and what you would have seen as a part of the system. So you will see clinicians and groups that qualify for the reweighting for the promoting interoperability performance category based on your clinician type or special status. You'll see clinicians or groups that qualify for more points in the improvement activities performance category based on special status. So again, this kind of gets back to if you're a small or rural practice, the double weighting for improvement activities. That's something you would also see. You will see clinicians who qualify for the 50% credit in the improvement activities performance category or scoring under the alternative payment model scoring standard based on participation in a MIPS APM from the first several snapshot dates, APM snapshot dates. And again, we can talk a little bit more about that if you do have questions related to the snapshot dates as we get into the Q&A, so please feel free to send us those questions. A couple of things, a couple considerations that will become available to you after the submission period has closed, because I think this is also important. So you will see clinicians and groups that receive full credit in the improvement activities performance category based on their participation in the CMS study on burden associated with reporting and quality measures. That will go in after the submission period closes. You'll also see for clinicians who are in the shared savings program who qualify for scoring under the APM scoring standard that I mentioned earlier, based on their participation during the fourth APM snapshot, that information will be added after submission closes. And finally, clinicians who qualify for the 50% credit in improvement activities based on participation in APM following the third APM snapshot date, that will also go in after submission closes. Okay. So that was those are a couple questions, and I know those are burning questions we've received quite a bit on. I'm going to stop there at this point, and I think we're going to open up for the open Q&A because we do want to hear from you and we want to maximize our time here today. So I'm going to turn it back over to our operator, and she will let you know how to dial in.
We're now going to start the Q&A portion of the webinar. You can ask questions via chat or phone. To ask a question via phone, please dial 1-866-452-7887. The number again, 1-866-452-7887. 7887. If prompted, please provide conference ID 7568505. Again, conference ID 7568505. Once you have joined the conference, please press star 1 on your telephone keypad to ask your question. That's star 1 to ask your question. We'll pause for just a moment.
Okay, fantastic. And as we're allowing folks to dial in and get ready to ask their question, I will also mention I see there are some questions coming in through the Q&A. We do have a number of our subject matter experts working through those questions right now. But please don't, feel free to reach out to us. We want to hear from you. This is your time over the next 35-ish minutes. Also, again, just as a reminder, we have this session today, but there are a lot of resources available. If you need help over the next 2 weeks, feel free to reach out to our service center, our technical assistants. Use the resources that we have available in the resource library and webinar library as well. And of course, my favorite plug is to sign up for the Quality Payment Program listserv because we'll stay in communication that way. Okay, so we'll take our first caller if we have one available.
Again, if you would like to ask a question, please press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. No questions at this time.
Okay, great. Well, we will keep the line open. Again, I'm going to just take a look through the Q&A right now just to see if we have any trending questions coming in. But also, we also will talk a little bit about some of the questions that we have been receiving over the last couple weeks. I know there is a question that we do get quite often as far as individual versus group level reporting and what's, can you report some categories as individuals and others as groups? So just to answer that quickly, the answer is no. Individual level submissions and group level submissions are not combined into a single final score. So if you are working with a vendor to submit data for some but not all of the performance categories, we do recommend that you, again, sign into qpp.cms.gov to confirm that you're reporting data at the same level. When you're reporting as a group, you should see the data submitted at the group level in the appropriate performance categories when you select report as a group. When you're reporting as individuals, you should see that individual level data submitted if you select report as individuals. So that's the two differentiations there. So if data is reported at both the individual and group level, clinicians who are MIPS eligible individuals at that specific practice will receive 2 final scores, one based on individual level data reported, the other would be based on the group level data reported. For clinicians who are only MIPS eligible at the group level at a specific practice, they'll receive that 1 final score based on the group level data reported, and the individual level submissions will be considered voluntary. Okay, just checking into the phone line. Do we have any questions? Checking on the phone line. Do we have any callers?
We do have a question from Rebecca Bass.
Hi, Adam. Good afternoon. This is Rebecca from Quality Insights. I just have a question about participants or MIPS-eligible clinicians that join after the final determination period. And I'm not referring to the ones that are in an APM. I'm actually just referring to MIPS-eligible clinicians. Under the new TINs that they joined, if it's after the second determination period, should that new TIN include their data as well, or just hope that there are other TIN reports for them, and how does that payment adjustment work under the new TIN?
Great question. Do we have one of our SMEs on the line that can take that one?
Hey, Adam. This is Maura. I can speak to this. If you have a MIPS-eligible clinician who joined your practice in the last 4 months of the performance period, so they start billing under a TIN after 9/1/2018, they will be assigned a neutral payment adjustment under your TIN if your practice is reporting as individuals, but they would get the group score if you're reporting at the group level. And so if they have data that contributes to the measures and activities you're reporting, you'd want to make sure you're including that in that group submission. But that's how it's going to work for 2018 and then also for 2019 as well.
Okay. What if they're reporting at the group level? Would they still receive the group score then? Is that what you said?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So if their practice is reporting as an individual, they'll get a neutral payment adjustment under that 10 NPI combination. And then if the practice is reporting as a group, that clinician would get the group score and the associated payment adjustment.
Okay, thank you for that. Just so you're aware, there has been some conflicting information coming out of the QPP help desk in regards to that. I've received your answer and then a different answer. That's why I was just curious to see what you guys had to say, rather than dancing around it. So thank you so much.
Yep, absolutely. And we actually are, there's a resource that we're looking to post on the QPP resource library so that will speak to this specifically so that you will have it in writing
Thank you so
from
much.
CMS. Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks, Maura.
Again, to ask a question, star then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. No additional questions at this time.
Okay, great. Just a couple of things. I did see a couple of questions coming through here. Just to re-clarify what I had mentioned earlier about will reweighting or the reduced reporting requirements be reflected during the submission period. So again, when submission opened on January 2nd, the system itself reflected some of the following. So clinicians and groups that qualify for that reweighting of the promoting interoperability performance category based on clinician type or special status. It also reflects clinicians and groups that qualify for additional points or the double reweighting for improvement activities performance category based on special status. So again, that's your small, your rurals that would have received that double weighting. That is reflected in the system right now. So I think that might address that question. But if I'm still not getting to it, just let me know and we can always circle back on that one too. We did get a question, and I think they're just bringing answers so fast that now I lost it. But just for folks who are not, the question was around the lines of if you're not required to report, is it still okay to report? So that would be voluntary reporting for the 2018 performance year. So if you are not eligible at the individual level and you are excluded from 2018, yes, you may still report as we call you, that's voluntary participation. We will provide you with feedback, but you will not get a payment adjustment based on your voluntary participation. So I think it's, we've always encouraged voluntary reporting because it helps you familiarize yourself with the program for future performance years in the event that you may be included. So there's really no harm in doing voluntary submission, and we'll make sure you get performance feedback on that. I did see another question come through related to the shared savings program and improvement activities. So I just want to read this one off, and then I think we'll have one of our subject matter experts address this one. So it says, if we are part of the Shared Savings Program ACO, is there something additional we need to do for full credit for the improvement activities portion of MIPS? So Rabia, do we have you on the line?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yes, so for clinicians participating in a shared savings program ACO, you will receive full credit for the improvement activities category, and nothing additional is needed. So there's no additional reporting that needs to be done. And Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe on one of your slides you're indicating that following submission and we get closer to feedback is when you would see all of the information reflected for final scoring.
Yep, that's correct. Okay, thank you, Rabia. Just want to check in on the phone line to see if we have anyone who's called in at this point.
There are no questions at this time. If you would like to ask a question, *1.
Okay, great. I think we're knocking a lot of questions out as a part of the chat, so I thank each of you for sending in your questions. Again, we're going to keep the phone line open, so if you do have additional questions or follow-up questions that you'd like to ask us, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, I will continue to kind of monitor the chat just to see what kind of questions we're getting and if we can answer any additional questions while we're on the line right now. Just looking through. I think we are answering questions left and right. Every time I go back to look at the Q&A box, another question has disappeared, so that's really fantastic. Again, just to kind of reiterate what we mentioned earlier, I know there were some questions just around when the recording, transcript, slide deck, all of that good stuff will be available. So give us about a week or two, and we'll get that out there and make sure that it's available to you all. We'll kind of double time it because I know we have about 2 weeks left in the submission period, so that way you have everything you need to round out this submission period for the 2018 performance year. Okay, just going to keep going through our list here and checking back in on the phone. Do we have any callers?
No questions at this time.
Okay. We do have a question here. And I think this kind of gets back to when a clinician joins a practice. So I might tee this one up for our subject matter experts just to talk through this one a little bit. So our participants, our callers asking if a provider joins a TIN after the second eligibility period and is not associated with the TIN on the QPP website, so the MPI lookup tool, how do we know that the new provider is associated with the TIN? So how can we confirm that? Can we answer that question, or is that one that we definitely want to take back?
Adam, I think that's one that we want to take back. I was just looking at that. So I have the name of the caller. So I'm going to see if we can nail that down.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So, Alexis, we will circle back on that for you. Going to check into the phone line again to see if we have any callers.
No question at this time. If you do have a question, please press *1 on your telephone keypad. *1.
Okay, and here's another good question. I know this is one that we do get quite often, and we often hear, whose data do I really need to include as a part of a group submission? So this question comes in. It's really about mid-level, so nurse practitioners, physician assistants. Let's see, mid-levels who are billing under their physician's NPI. When I looked them up on the QPP website, again, the participation status lookup, they do not have data. Do they need to be included in the group submission? Can one of our experts talk to that one a little bit, just what's included as a part of a group submission?
Hey, Adam, this is Damon. I just wanted to clarify the question. What exactly do we mean by data?
I think this question is specific to if I'm reporting as a group, if I'm reporting as a group, do I include MIPS eligible clinicians only, or can I include both MIPS eligible clinicians and other eligible clinicians as a part of that group submission? If I'm reading this right. Okay, so I think we have another question here that we're going to definitely take back and work through this one just to make sure we've got the right answer. So great question. These are the things that we certainly like to see because it helps us think through our FAQs, make sure we've got the good information out there. So we'll take that one back as well and work through that one and get that answer available. Let's check back in on the phone lines to see if we have any additional callers.
No questions at this time.
We have quite a shy group today. But yeah, highly recommend if you are interested, just call in. We're happy to discuss questions, feedback that you might have, any challenges you may be experiencing. So feel free. A question about the Q&A. That's the Q&A is a portion of this call and whether we include that as a part of the materials that we post. Traditionally, we haven't, just because we do get a tremendous number of questions during the session. If it is helpful, that's something that we can certainly look into, potentially pulling out a couple of questions, some of our trending questions or some of the questions that we did want to follow up on, and include them as part of either the transcript or some additional slides that are posted, if that is helpful. I know that's something that I think we did see from our last submission period or our last submission office hours as well. So if that's helpful, that's something we can certainly look into. Okay. Keep charging forward, looking through questions. Like I said, every time I go for a question, it's being answered by one of our subject matter experts, which is fantastic. And just checking back in on the phone line. Do we have any callers? Any brave callers?
We have no questions at this time. If you'll press *1 to ask your question.
Okay. And we did have a vote to potentially include some Q&A, so we'll take that vote back. That's always good feedback for us as we move forward, certainly with our other webinars as well, not just our submission office hours. Okay.
One moment, we do have a question.
Okay, great.
Caller, please go ahead with your question.
Hi, I'm the one that asked the question about the mid-levels who, when I look them up on the QPP website, the term no data means that that's what the website brings back. There's no data of them billing Medicare because they're billing under their physician's NPI number. So that's that question. The other question is, in a practice I'm working with, they have 14 physicians and 3 mid-levels, again, billing under their physician's NPI. Does that practice count as a small practice?
So one more time, there are 14 MIPS eligible or 14 eligible clinicians or MIPS eligible clinicians in the practice?
Yes.
So they're a small practice. The small practice is defined as 15 or fewer eligible clinicians.
Okay, so if some of those mid-levels were billing under their own NPI, then they would count towards the number to calculate whether it's a small practice or not, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Great, thank you.
No additional questions at this time.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to just keep looking through our Q&A. We are getting through these really nicely. So again, if you do have a question, please feel free to call in. or just send us a little note in the Q&A box. Our subject matter experts are working fast and furiously to answer as many questions as they can right now, which is fantastic. Did just want to touch on a couple of questions here that I know do come up. I've seen one come up so far, and others might be thinking it, so I might try to help this along. Just a couple of questions. So one question is, what happens if I upload multiple files? If you upload multiple files? Yep, what happens if you upload multiple files?
Yeah, we can answer that question. If you upload multiple files, we're going to take your most recent submission.
Perfect. Easy peasy, right?
Yep, very easy.
Perfect. The other question that I know we did get before, and I saw this from our previous session, but also seeing a little bit here, at least alluding to it, what if I notice data submission errors by our third-party intermediary? So if you do notice an error in the data that is submitted on your behalf, certainly contact the third party about correcting and resubmitting your data before the submission period closes. You cannot submit or resubmit data once that submission period closes on April 2nd at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. I didn't mention that earlier, but that's 8 o'clock Eastern Time. So we're all tracking to the same 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. So we're all tracking to the same time. So that's why this is so important, if you have not done so already, to sign into qpp.cms.gov just to double check that all of your data is accurate and it was submitted accurately if you are working with a third party. If you do have any questions about that, certainly please feel free to reach out to the Quality Payment Program, or if you have any challenges, you can certainly reach out to the Quality Payment Program Service Center and we can try our best to help. There are some other options too available if you do notice any issues with your data. Okay. Checking back into the phone line.
There are no additional questions at this time.
Okay. Question from Alexis. I think this is a good one. May we optionally report non-eligible clinicians such as PTs and OTs in preparation for the 2019 performance year? Yes. Confirming you were told yes, that is correct, and we'll verify that for you. That is correct. Okay. Leslie, thank you for just flagging this for you. This is back to the kind of the mid-level question. Thank you for flagging this for us. We are going to look into this one for you. Certainly one that we'll take back and take a look at, see if we can get an answer for that specific question. But appreciate you flagging this one for us. Okay. We keep knocking the questions out here. Checking back into the phone line one more time.
No additional questions at this time.
One question we get quite a bit is, should I take screenshots of my data, or is there any print functionality that's available now with the new, with any of the enhancements that we've made in the submission feature? So, if you want to talk a little bit about that, Sarah.
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry about that. So just to let folks know, if you're noticing something on the submission user interface that doesn't look right and you want to have a discussion with the help desk, we have a really nice feature in the system for you. So you're going to look in the top right area of the window, you're going to see a print button. And when you click on that, it's going to cause your browser to pop up with the normal native print functionality. and you can use that to save a PDF. And that's a really helpful tool both for you because you can save that information for your records, and you can give it to the help desk, and they can send it ultimately to the product team who will be able to do a much better job of investigating any issues you might be having. So please do consider utilizing that feature. It's a lot easier than taking a screenshot. It's going to take all of the information from the entire page.
Perfect. A new and exciting enhancement.
Yes.
Certainly something that we know a lot of folks asked for last year. So definitely added that feature in as a part of the feedback that you all provided us, along with a number of other enhancements to the submission functionality and to the submission experience. So we certainly appreciate all of the feedback that you provide, and in many cases we try our best to implement what we can to make this as seamless of an experience as possible for you all. Okay, going to check back in on the phone line just to see if we have any additional questions at this time.
No additional questions at this time, sir.
Okay. We are getting closer to the top of the hour, so as I mentioned earlier, this is our last office hour session prior to the close of the submission period. So we do have, a couple minutes left. If you have anything, any burning questions or any concerns that you'd like to just share with us at this point. Otherwise, after this call, we will have the webinars, the recordings posted. But again, if you have a question or find yourself in a bit of a scenario, feel free to reach out to the Quality Payment Program Service Center. You may also, and I highly encourage you to do this, reach out to our technical assistance networks. They are available to help you through the process, many of whom will even come to your practice and help if you need it, if that's the type of support that you definitely need. And of course, it's absolutely no cost. It is free support, so please take advantage. And of course, we also have a number of our micro videos on not only data submission and getting through the experience, but also creating the identity management account if that's the stage that you're at right now. Okay, checking back in on the phone line. Again, we have a couple more minutes, so if we do have any callers, this is kind of the last call for questions and comments.
Press star 1 on your telephone keypad to ask your question or make a comment. Star 1. There are no additional questions at this time.
Okay. All right. I'm going to scan through the Q&A box one more time. Again, we're knocking these out. So, and I do see that there, for the questions that we haven't touched on, I know we've touched on a couple of these as we've been talking here, but for the questions that we haven't touched on yet, I do see some of our subject matter experts are walking through or currently answering those questions. For a couple of the questions that came in, I know we flagged 2 earlier that we want to deep dive a little bit more on and return with some guidance. We will have those. We'll take a look at those questions. They were great. So that's something that we can deep dive a bit and then have those answers available. And whether we include that as part of the transcript or the slides, we'll make sure that information gets out to everyone so that we can wrap up the 2018 performance year successfully. Okay, just a couple of minutes remaining. Any final questions from our group? I think we've gotten through quite a bit here today in the hour that we've had together. Any final questions, comments, feedback for us at this point? The good news is we have all of our subject matter experts on the line, so we're all here and kind of eager to hear any feedback that you might have. Checking back in on the phone line, I think probably for the final time here, see if we have any last callers.
Press star and the number 1 if you would like to ask a question or make a comment. There are no questions or comments at this time.
Okay. So I think that means that everyone is feeling comfortable at this point with 2 weeks remaining. Comfortable with that you either have gotten your data over to us and you're feeling comfortable with where you stand, or you're ready to submit and you've got the answers to your questions that you have. Again, 2 weeks, April 2nd. April 2nd at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. That is the submission deadline for the majority of our MIPS eligible clinicians who are reporting data for the 2018 performance year. That's the deadline for the majority of folks. Also, just a reminder, if you are using the CMS web interface, that closes on March 22nd. Again, that's also at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That closes March 22nd, so a few days left. That's this Friday. If you do have some last-minute questions related to the web interface option, highly encourage you to join the final discussion on the web interface tomorrow, our web interface support webinar tomorrow, to get all of those questions answered prior to the March 22nd deadline. So just keep those key dates in mind. Just from our discussion today, it seems like everyone is in a good spot with 2 weeks remaining, so that's always a really good sign. We certainly appreciate all of the questions and feedback that you sent to us through the Q&A, and certainly our conversations for those who dialed in today. Appreciate that. Again, if you find yourself needing some support over the next 2 weeks, the Quality Payment Program Service Center is a great option. We also have our free technical assistance, all of the resources available in the resource library. Do recommend, I'll say this for the final time, do recommend signing up for the Quality Payment Program listserv. As we discussed, we'll let you know when our webinar, the recording from our discussion today, from our webinar today, is posted to the website so that you can access that, so you can go through some of the information that we shared today. It's also a great resource as we release additional fact sheets, user guides, videos, all sorts of really excellent resources. We will flag that for you as well, in addition to our upcoming webinars. So now that we're wrapping up our 2018 performance year and our submission period is about 2 weeks out, we'll be moving on and really focusing on the 2019 performance year. So we're excited. So be on the lookout for those additional webinars that are coming up. So at this point, I think we are at the top of the hour, so we're going to wrap up our call for today. We'll try to answer any last-minute questions that are in the Q&A for you all. But I do want to thank you for joining us. We appreciate your support, and we'll talk to you all again soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. This concludes today's conference. You may now disconnect. Speakers, please hold the line.